Hey, what's up, everybody? So today I want to talk about fatigue resistance, a really important topic because it matters who's the strongest at the end of the race or towards the end of the race. And I think it's tough for myself at times to use the data to actually make improvements besides just looking at data and being like, oh, this looks cool. Like, but what can I draw from this? But I do think you can see some awesome trends. And I've picked out 5 athletes here. And it's kind of interesting the stories that just these past, I put the time as past 1,095 days. And just looking at how do they perform after 500 kJs burned, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. But this all came up because this athlete had this ride where we did some end of the day 30-second efforts. It's about 30-second efforts max, recover for maybe 5 minutes between and do it again. He absolutely motored through the entire ride. And one of the efforts in the second set was close to a season PR for 30 seconds. I was like, man, that's pretty wild to see this late in the ride. And so I was looking at where this stacked up in terms of the past 3 years of his efforts after burning about 2,000 or 3,000 kJs. And it was close to a PR. As you can see in this chart here, this is looking at, so he did 647 watts for 647 watts for 30 seconds. And it was just at about 2,800 kJs. So I really think I should have this chart split at like 2,500 and also 3,500 and 4,500. This later stage stuff is really important for you gravel racers. And we'll talk about that in a second. But so he did 647 at 2,800. I mean, had he done another 200 kJ, that would probably register here. And that would be a PR for the hardest 30 seconds that he's done after burning 3,000 kJs in the past 3 years, which is literally exactly what we've been training. Not specifically for a cross race, because those are obviously much shorter, but he's seeing the anaerobic power later in these aerobic rides that he's doing. So I started looking around some other athletes, and I don't think, here's my issue with this chart. Let's say for this guy, after 3,000 kJs, we might say, oh, well, he can only do 625. Well, maybe not. I mean, most people aren't riding 3,000 kJs and then doing a 30-second one-off effort. So you have to take this with somewhat of a grain of salt. It depends on the person's training. And we'll talk about an example with like a gravel rider person who's always doing longer rides. They might have a different type of the bands, how they're all related. And I think this is what this chart, could be really used for. If someone has other really good information, they've come across articles, videos, or whatever, how people are using information from fatigue resistance charts and applying it to their training, I'd love to see it. But here we've got a guy, say you're a Cat 4, this guy's really aerobically strong. Maybe after 2,000 kJs, we'd want to see this a little bit closer to his, PDC, his power duration curve, which is just his one-off bests. You notice after 3,000 kJs, they really fall off. Well, why is that? This guy's a Cat 4. He doesn't burn 3,000 kJs very often, doesn't have nearly any races where he's going to burn 3,000 kJs, which is where some of these best max efforts are going to come from. So it's kind of just not relevant. Cat 3. Okay, so see, his green is a little bit closer. You can see actually all of these after 1,000 and 1,500 kJs, there's like no difference, which is really good. Has definitely done some races over 2,000 kJs. I know this guy. One comment that we made, he's about to upgrade to Cat 2. His sprint at the end of the day is not where he wants it to be, and boom, this totally shows it. When he's going to start doing some races where he's definitely going to be burning 3,000 kJ, he needs some anaerobic training late in the day. I think these threads here are gold to find these out. He's not doing he doesn't do gravel. He's not going to do any super big races. Maybe when he gets his one, he'll be burning 4,000 in a race, but those are few and far between. So these lines aren't super applicable to him. This gravel guy, what are you going to expect? So the sprint he's never sprinting. So he's never burning 3,000 kJs and doing sprints. He is, though, probably doing 10, 15-minute efforts. And while these are good, they could be better. I think that's one thing that he could draw from this is it's clear that after 2000, things kind of do fall off a little bit. But he's still like 3,000, 4,000, it's all the same. So maybe that's just where he's at, or it's something that he should try and train. There's an expense to everything that you do, right? So if you do one type of training one day, you can't do another. I'm not saying that this should lead you to always doing efforts late in the day, but there's other ways to think about this. You know, are you ever doing your efforts spread out? And this is, I'm sure someone else is talking about this. I'm not saying I'm coming up with a crazy technique. And I was like, hey, what if we did more like a 5-minute effort here, then a 5-minute effort later, and a 5-minute effort later? You could do those. I think there's benefit to doing those efforts late in the day because you learn what 5 minutes at 3,000 kJs feels like. It's not a pretty sight, but at some race, you might need to do that. And being able to bank on that, I think, is really important. The feelings that you have and understanding how it's going to feel to go hard at different points in the day is gold. And the other thing that I've talked about with James Walsh on our podcast, I think, was we both like 4 by 10-minute efforts. Ride 1,000 kJs, do a 10-minute effort. Do another 1,000 kJs, do a 10-minute effort. Do another 1,000 kJs, do a 10-minute effort. Do another 1,000 kJs, do a 10-minute effort, and then limp home. I think it's a good ride. I haven't done that in a while. Maybe I'll do it this weekend. Gravel rider, though, so maybe we can improve there. And then what was the one thing that I talked about from Gravel Worlds? This was the first conversation I had when I was talking to Tom about my weakness was it's not a one-off 30-second effort. It's the late in the day, long gravel race, long, maybe if it's a pro road race that I'm able to get into, super late, the peppering of these attacks, just couldn't stay with it. Here's mine over the past 3 years. Literally, that is the weak spot. Like the bands all stay pretty darn close up through 3,000 kJs for a really long time. It's this 4,000 and 5,000 kJ, and they are the most spread out here. You know, I think there's definitely some merit to, I'm doing 15-minute efforts after 4,000 kJs, close to what I'm doing after 2,000 kJs, but the 5,000 one for like a Gravel Worlds or, geez, it's going to be like anything over 110 miles probably. That's definitely a weak spot. So if that race was my main target, I think this is very valuable information. But again, the big thing here, it's like smack dab in your face. Look for where's there a ballooning of the lines. So I don't know. This might not be the best. This is in the weeds. This isn't going to... This is going to make you more think about your training as opposed to just giving you the answers. And that's kind of what this channel is about. So hopefully you think a little bit more about what you're doing, why you're doing it. And that's one thing we're going to talk about more as we have some training packs that we're going to put out. Somebody had made a comment to me that we have a lot of blogs on a lot of different information. And while we've tried to categorize them and boil them down, somebody said, I would love all the information on different training topics in a PDF, or I don't want to buy a template that has like, I don't need to know what, I'm not paying somebody to find out what to do on a rest day. I want their best workouts. I want, and people want to put things together on their own a little bit. And so I said, maybe we'll do that. So we've been working on some ways to put out content that will help you understand when to use something and how to execute it. And we'll probably post them in Training Peaks. We're probably going to set up something on our website. But it's going to take a lot of time for us to put it together. So we're still going to have all the free content, but you got to do a little bit more work for that. If we have everything dialed, we put together guides, we put together training packs, we will charge for that. I don't want to seem like a sellout because I've always promoted free content. Everything that you can find, I shouldn't say everything. Most of the things in the guides, it's scattered all through the website. This is for people that are short on time. They want something laser focused. And it's like, here's a 10-page PDF. If you want to dive in, here's the way to execute it. Here's when you do it. I still don't love it, but I think it could help. So we'll talk about that. I want to find out the best way to execute that before we put it out. So Good luck with your training. If you like the podcast, please leave us a review on Apple, like it on Spotify, leave us 5-star review. Please subscribe. Tell a friend. We greatly appreciate it. See you later.